Hello, my name is Dr. April Sikorsky, and I'm the director of the Brazosport College Writing Center. I'm here to talk to you today about the TSIA 2.0 English Language Arts and Right Placer sections. We'll cover the content of both tests and give you some tips and tricks to help you out. We're going to start with the ELAR, or English Language Arts and Reading portion. So what's on the ELAR test? Well, you have two different question types. Reading and writing focused questions. Reading focused questions are more reading comprehension, and writing focused questions are questions that ask you to revise a provided sentence or paragraph. In reading focused questions, you're looking at the analysis of literary texts, like explicit information, inferences, author's craft, and vocabulary. You're also going to be analyzing and synthesizing informational texts. You'll be asked to find the main idea, supporting details, single passage inferences, and you may be asked to synthesize two passages. The writing focus questions ask you to revise and edit an essay. You may be asked to provide or to answer questions about development, organization, word choice, and standard English grammar conventions. You'll also have some sentence revising, editing, and completion questions that test your knowledge of conventions of standard English grammar, usage, and punctuation. When thinking about the reading-focused questions, here's some strategies that you can use. You want to read the passage quickly. Then, read each question closely, one by one. After you read the question, go back and reread the part of the passage that question indicates you have to analyze. Refer between the passage and the questions as many times as necessary. Don't feel like you have to read the passage once, then read the questions and not go back to the passage. The idea is to reference the passage as many times as possible. To reference the passage as many times as possible, and to read the passage as many times as possible. Strategies for helping you with the content revision and editing portion of the ELAR are as follows. Before the test, you might want to complete some revision practice. We have revision practice at our TSI resources modules on our website, the brazosport.edu Writing Center website. So brush up on some of those revision practices so you're understanding how to use the knowledge that you have about standard English grammar as you edit. During the test, you want to read the question sentence. Then read each answer as if it's part of the question sentence. Choose your answer based on your knowledge of which conjugation or phrase is going to fit that sentence the best. The best thing to do is read out loud. Now, I know you're going to be in a room, so you want to read out loud quietly to yourself. That way you can hear each of the provided multiple choice answers as they would be read in that sentence. Your standard English knowledge of standard English grammar is going to help you out, and you'll be able to hear which one sounds the best. The way to develop that knowledge of standard English grammar is to practice as many times as possible with revision and grammar activities. Some of those are provided on the Writing Center website, and you can Google around for more. Let's take a look at some sample content and revision questions. We're going to practice the strategies that we just learned. So let's read the question and read each of the answers and see which sounds the best and fits the punctuation of the sentence. Indiana is the smallest state in the Midwest, although they have one of the largest populations of any state in that region. Indiana is the smallest state in the Midwest, although with one of the largest populations of any state in that region. Well, both of those are going to make the second sentence, both of those are going to make this a run-on sentence, and that means the second sentence is going to be a fragment, but the punctuation doesn't exist for either. Let's see about the but sentences. Indiana is the smallest state in the Midwest, but has one of the largest populations of any state in that region. That one sounds good, and the punctuation's going to fit. Let's see the next one. Indiana is the smallest state in the Midwest, but they have one of the largest populations of any state in that region. Well, just like the A choice, D provides us a compound sentence, and the punctuation of the original sentence doesn't have any commas. So if you guess C, that's the right answer. Indiana is the smallest state in the Midwest, but has one of the largest populations of any state in that region. This makes this a sentence that doesn't need any additional punctuation. That's the trick with these content and revision. You have to find the one that sounds the best, but also fits the structure of the sentence. Let's take a look at the next one. Charleston, South Carolina is a popular city for tourists, comma, with their historical sites and beautiful weather. So we know that this second part is going to be describing Charleston, South Carolina. And we have to remember that we're looking for what sounds right, but also fits with the grammar and punctuation already in the sentence. Charleston, South Carolina is a popular city for tourists with their historic sites and beautiful weather. Charleston, South Carolina is a popular city for tourists with its historical sites and beautiful weather. Between A and B, which do you think? We're deciding between their and its for describing a city. Since their describes people and its describes things, its would be the better choice. So right now, I'm going to guess that it has to be B or C, are two choices that have it in the answer. Let's read the rest. Charleston, South Carolina is a popular city for tourists. It has historic sites and beautiful weather. Well, that's a complete sentence, and since we only have a comma connecting the first clause with the second, we know we can't have a complete sentence, so that knocks C out. Let's see about D. Charleston, South Carolina is a popular city for tourists because of their historic sites and beautiful weather. That one sounds pretty good. But that word there might be the trick. Even though D sounds great, because there describes people and its describes things, B is actually the best answer. So, as we've discussed with sample content and revision questions, the trick is really understanding the grammar rules that you're looking at, reading the question, reading each answer as part of the sentence, and then listening to hear what phrase sounds best within the grammar of that sentence. Now, let's take a look at the right placer, which is the essay portion of the TSI-2. The criteria used to evaluate your TSIA-2 essay is as follows. They're looking for purpose and focus. With purpose and focus, that's your argument or your claim. And they want to make sure that that argument or claim is directly connected to the prompt that you're looking at or the prompt that you've been assigned. All of your examples connect to and develop that one specific claim. Organization and structure. For this, you're looking to make sure that each idea that you have builds on the one that you talked about before and also anticipates or sets up the one that follows. They want you to use transitions, but they have to be meaningful. Don't just throw in transition words, but make sure you throw in the right transition words to make the move that you intend to make. Multiple paragraphs discussing one idea each. So each of your paragraphs should have a different example, and you should only have one core example per paragraph. Development and support. Each of the examples that you've chosen to include support your paper's claim and help you develop that idea. If you include counter arguments, that would fall under development and support. Development and support is looking for the progression of one idea to another. So it is connected to organization and structure and purpose and focus. If you don't have a strong purpose and focus that is organized, where all of your examples are organized to build on the one before and set up the next one, there's a good chance that the examples that you're choosing may not be developed enough to support that paper's focus. The first three criteria are your higher order concerns. The second three criteria are your lower order concerns. Higher order concerns deal with purpose and organization, and lower order concerns deal with style and grammatical convention. As you can see, The fourth criteria is sentence variety and style. What the readers are looking for here is control of word choice, voice, and structure. That each of your sentences connects to and builds on the one before and sets up the next one, just like your examples and paragraphs. You want to have an intentional choice of words and structure, which means that you don't throw in any extra words just to hit the word count. Mechanical conventions involves grammatical clarity, which should be in standard written English, spelling, punctuation, and things that they're specifically looking at are subject-verb agreement and sentence boundaries. In terms of critical thinking, this is probably the highest order concern, and it encompasses your clarity of expression, communication, development, organization, and purpose. In terms of critical thinking, the readers are looking for a paper whose argument communicates a clear point of view that is connected to the assigned prompt and reading. The paper should illustrate college-level complexity and a clear, reasoned analysis of the issue presented in the prompt. And what they mean by clear and reasoned is that each of the claims that you make and each of the examples that you use make sense when presented next to one another. You have made each of these examples make sense in the logical progression in which you've presented them. When meeting these criteria, the essay that you write should be between 300 to 600 words. Now that we know how we're going to be evaluated, let's take a look at the ideal structure for the TSIA2 essay. Your introduction paragraph should have about 3 to 4 sentences. You want to begin your essay with some kind of generalization about the topic, maybe a quote or a short anecdote that sets up the correctness of your position. You can discuss how your answer or claim or position connects to history or current events or the importance of this issue overall. Please be sure that you admit the complexity of this issue. There's often going to be multiple sides, and doing that early in your paper allows you to address counter-arguments later on. You have 2 goals for the beginning part of your essay. You want to introduce your topic and express your opinion on it, because your opinion is going to be your thesis or claim. That thesis or claim should ideally show up in the last part of your introduction, the last sentence or so, and it will be the answer to the direct question asked in the prompt. The introduction to this piece is much like the introduction to most papers that you'll write in high school or college. You have a claim, and you set up the paper so that your readers understand what that claim is going to be and how it connects to the passage and to the question. After you've stated your claim, your first example paragraph is going to show up. And you're going to want to make sure that each of your example paragraphs, ideally you'll have 3, have about 4 to 6 sentences. For your first example paragraph, you want to start with your most powerful or most relevant example. Be specific when discussing your example. You might have a whole bunch of ideas going on at once, but each paragraph should only talk about one example. So pick the one that you're most knowledgeable about and the one that you think most strongly supports your thesis, and use that one first. In this and all of your other body paragraphs, your 3 tasks are to introduce your example, describe it in detail, and fully explain how it supports your thesis. Please be sure that you don't assume that your reader is going to understand how your example connects to your argument. Part of your task is being very clear, maybe too clear, if you think about it or if for conversation with your friends. But for academic writing, the more clear and specific you are, the better. You should spend most of your body paragraph working on explaining how this example supports your thesis. They suggest that you aim to convince your reader through very concrete details. Don't leave anything to generalities or examples. According to the readers, they don't want your paragraph to end by referencing the next point. You're going to reference the next point and transition to that point purposefully at the start of your second example paragraph, which is really paragraph 3 in the paper. Again, you'll describe your example, and spend most of the paragraph explaining how that example fully supports your thesis. You can refer to your first example, but you don't want to spend most of the paragraph on that first example or the third example. The second example paragraph is designed to discuss that second example. Now, when you're making those transition moves, you want to make sure that you just don't throw in however or therefore or although. Think critically about what that transition word means and what that word indicates, what kind of movement it indicates. So, however means that you're moving from one thing to a thing that is in contrast. Rather might do the same thing, but therefore is used more to show two like things and moving from one similar thing to another similar thing. If you need some help with transitions, I'll show you some resources at the end, but if you go to the Brazos Sport College Writing Center page and click through resources for students, we have some great information to help you with transition words and how to use them meaningfully and purposefully. So, at the start of your third paragraph, you're going to again have a purposeful, meaningful transition from that second example to the third. When you're talking about that first sentence or two, you might discuss the second example briefly, but be sure you do that to set up that third example, to explain what that third example is and how it's going to develop your thesis. As with our other example paragraphs, you'll describe the example and use most of the paragraph to show how it connects to your thesis. With all of these example paragraphs, make sure that you're clear and articulating how this example connects to your topic. Now that we've looked at example paragraphs, let's take a look at the conclusion. In the conclusion, you want to think of yourself as answering the question, so what? So what does this claim mean or have to do with anything larger, any other larger ideas? If you have any opposing ideas or counter arguments, this is a great place to bring them up. But remember, when you're bringing up those counter arguments, you're raising them so that you can explain them and refute them in order to reinforce the correctness of your paper's claim or your general idea. You don't want to have new concepts or new counter arguments in your conclusion that you just kind of leave hanging, because then you're going to unmake the strength of your entire paper. So let's take a look at some examples of templates that you could use for this kind of work in your in your conclusion. So here's a template. Some have argued that blank, believing that blank. However, this point of view on the issue is negated by blank. Rather, and then this would explain what blank is. Therefore, in the long run, blank. You have another template below, and both of these are used to show how you can refute opposing points of view. So, some have argued opposing point of view, or although opposing point of view is correct, or although I am correct, some have argued opposing point of view, believing that blank. However, this viewpoint on the issue is negated by my really awesome point. Rather, my claim is true. Therefore, in the long run, my claim is the one that you want to go with. Ideally, with either of these templates, you're raising that counter argument so that you can spend a bulk of the time, as you can see, 3 of the sentences in the template, showing that your argument is actually more correct than the opposing view. As with the examples that you raised in your example paragraphs, those that you raise in your conclusion need to be all in service of developing, defending, and arguing your paper's central claim. Now that we understand the criteria and the ideal structure for these essays, let's look at some tips that'll help you in your writing. The first thing that I want to talk about is finding the question in the prompt. You want to read the passage. The prompt is going to have a passage or a quotation, and then it's going to have a specific question. So you want to read that passage, then read the question. Then spend some time thinking about and interpreting how that passage answers the question. Determine how that passage and the connection connect. What does the passage say or claim? And how could you use that passage to answer the question? Your interpretation of the passage should help you make your claim in your introduction. If you don't use it in your introduction, it definitely should be the first example of your paper. While we don't have an opportunity to practice together today, I do want to show you what a prompt looks like. So you can see the passage here and then the assignment question. You want to read that passage, read the assignment question, and then go back and try to figure out and maybe take some notes on scratch paper about how and when this quote from Lawrence Eisenberg addresses and answers that question. If you agree with the position of the quote, that's your argument. If you disagree with the position of the quote, that's your argument. Whatever your position is in relation to that quote and assignment question, or how that quote answers the assignment question, is your argument. We talked a little bit about scratch paper and those notes that you were jotting down about the passage and the question and their relationship together are your introduction. Then you want to make a list of all of the examples that you could use for the paper. Find the 3 that you think are strongest and mark those down as your core paragraphs. Then jot down some notes about any counter arguments that you might be able to refute in your conclusion. This whole outlining process is 5 minutes at max, but it's 5 minutes well spent because it helps to make sure that you have your organization and structure outlined in a way that will allow you to purposefully develop your claim. Once you have your outline, it's time to write your paper. And after you've written, you need to leave some time to revise and edit. Now, revising on demand is different than revising when you have more time. You want to read fast because you're looking for content and clarity. You're making sure that your essay makes sense. You're checking your examples to make sure that they actually do develop that argument. If not, change one out and put another one in. Make any changes that you need to make. And if you find any run-on ideas, this is a great time to shorten those sentences up. The most important thing when revising on demand is making sure that you sound clear. Don't try to sound smart. The more clear you are, the more... I was just very unclear, but the more clear you are, the smarter that you'll sound. After you've revised for those larger concerns, go back and spend some time editing. Get as much distance from your essay as possible. If we only have a few minutes, that's not going to be much. So take a deep breath and maybe stretch in that seat so that you can at least change your body a little bit. Then, I know you're in a room with other people, but read out loud and don't start with the beginning. Start with the very last sentence of your paper and read your paper backwards, sentence by sentence. You've already determined that your ideas are sound and they're in the right place. So now you're disconnecting yourself from that structure and looking just at your grammar. Carefully paying attention to spelling, sentence boundaries, capitalization, and things like subject-verb agreement. I know this was a long video and I appreciate you sticking with me the whole way through. If you're looking for some more preparation for the TSIA2, specifically one-on-one help, you want to visit the Brazosport College Writing Center. You can hit us up on our website, give us a call, or shoot me an email. Again, my name's Dr. Sikorsky for the Brazosport College Writing Center, and I hope this video provided you with some great tips and tricks for the TSIA2, ELAR, and Right Placer. Thanks.